Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we are diving straight into the psychology of a high IQ, and we're going to unpack what it actually means to have a highly intelligent brain, because as you'll see, it goes way, way beyond standardized tests and academic scores. Have you ever noticed that the absolute smartest people in the room are rarely the ones talking the loudest? It really challenges this massive societal assumption we have. I think most of us assume having a high IQ just means you're basically a human calculator, right? Like you just snap to the quickest right answer and cruise through this incredibly easy, frictionless life. But the research reveals something completely different. Extreme intelligence is rarely loud. It's not flashy. It is deeply internal. It's quiet, and it fundamentally changes how your brain actually filters and processes reality. And because of this internal complexity, highly intelligent people often end up feeling, well, a bit isolated. Maybe you experience constant overthinking. Or maybe you feel completely drained by just 5 minutes of casual small talk about the weather. Or maybe you find yourself easily bored by things that literally everyone else seems to love. If that sounds familiar, let me tell you right now, there is absolutely nothing wrong with you. You aren't antisocial, you aren't just overly anxious. These are actually hidden neurological signs of extremely high cognitive ability. Your brain is simply demanding a totally different level of engagement. Let's look at how a brain like this handles real-time reactions. Think about the average person facing a stressful situation or an emotional trigger. They react instantly. Boom. The human brain evolved to respond quickly to threats for survival, not necessarily to respond wisely to emotions. But the high IQ brain does something truly remarkable here. It naturally hits pause. It actually creates this critical mental gap, which allows the reasoning centers of the brain to fully boot up and override those pure, primitive emotional impulses. Psychologists actually have a term for this. It's called cognitive inhibition. And what's so fascinating is that this isn't just you hesitating. It is a highly advanced neurological process. Cognitive inhibition is driven by high executive control and advanced working memory. So when an emotional trigger hits, instead of just letting your impulses grab the steering wheel, a high IQ brain mentally zooms out. It evaluates all the potential consequences in a fraction of a second, and then it deliberately chooses a calculated response instead of just panicking or lashing out. It is literally an incredible mental braking system. But here's the catch. Because you're pausing to use that incredible braking system, to the outside world, that calmness can sometimes look a lot like coldness. People might mistake your mental distance for a total lack of empathy, or they might just assume you don't care at all. But the reality is the exact opposite. That deliberate response is a sign of massive cognitive strength and profound self-regulation. You are processing the emotion just as deeply as anyone else, but you're simply refusing to let it control your outward actions without a logical review first. Okay, but what happens when that incredibly powerful brain isn't actively managing a crisis? Well, it rarely ever slows down. Having high cognitive ability means you are processing reality in multiple layers, constantly juggling variables. You're probably running nonstop mental simulations, spotting hidden flaws in systems that everyone else just blindly accepts. Or, laying in bed at 3 a.m. replaying a totally casual conversation from 5 years ago. Your mind is just in absolute overdrive. People love to tell you that you're just being anxious. But what's really happening is your brain is locked into relentless, incredibly strong pattern recognition. You easily spot illogical behavior and inconsistencies because your mind automatically analyzes information even when it completely doesn't need to. Now, sure, this is a massive intellectual advantage at work or when you're solving complex problems, but it's also exactly why your brain struggles to just switch off, which, as you might guess, leads directly to chronic mental exhaustion and definitely some sleep problems. And because your brain processes information so incredibly fast, you also hit a wall of boredom much faster than everyone else. Let's break down the actual neuroscience of boredom for a second. Psychology shows us that when a task is too easy, too predictable, or repetitive, the brain literally stops releasing stimulation chemicals like dopamine. Routine tasks offer zero chemical reward for a highly intelligent mind. None. To actually get that dopamine release, your brain requires complex input that triggers its deep processing mode. So the takeaway here is incredibly validating. Listen to this. Routine tasks, slow environments, predictable conversations, they feel physically and mentally painful to a high IQ mind. You do not lose interest because you lack discipline or because you're lazy. No way. You lose interest because your brain biologically requires complexity, novelty, and challenging input just to stay awake. Without a real mental stretch to force your brain into that deep processing mode, your motivation simply evaporates. And that is exactly why you crave deep, abstract conversations and find shallow, small talk completely, totally painful. Now, this need for deep processing builds into another really fascinating trait, metacognition. This is the rare psychological habit of constantly thinking about your own thinking. Highly intelligent people don't just observe the world around them, they intensely observe their own internal reasoning process. It's like they're always checking their own mental math, making sure they know exactly how they arrived at a conclusion. They rely heavily on that internal reasoning, rather than constantly looking around the room to see if everyone else agrees with them. And because of this metacognition, instead of walking into a room with a bloated ego, assuming they're always right, highly intelligent individuals naturally doubt themselves. They are constantly asking, wait, what if I'm wrong? They actually examine their own baseline assumptions and demand to know what real evidence supports their views. They don't treat their opinions like their core identity. This kind of self-questioning is the absolute hallmark of a mind that values objective truth way more than the comfort of just being right. Which leads us directly right into this next concept, cognitive flexibility. When new facts or new evidence come to light that contradict their current beliefs, a high IQ mind just adjusts its thinking. And crucially, they do this without feeling like their ego or their entire identity is under attack. Because they aren't emotionally attached to being right, they can pivot incredibly smoothly when the data changes. This is also exactly why highly intelligent people consistently question authority and really struggle to blindly accept shallow advice. If the logic doesn't hold up, they simply won't go along with it. And this translates so elegantly into how they view the entire world. While the average person often views the world in these extreme black and white terms just to feel safe, highly intelligent people think in probabilities. They are constantly evaluating the likelihood of various outcomes. They understand nuance. They know that very, very few things in life are 100% certain, and they are completely comfortable operating in that gray area, calculating the most probable path forward based on whatever data they have. It is genuinely fascinating to see how this intense logic applies inwardly to their own emotions, too. This is a concept called cognitive distancing. Highly intelligent individuals often intellectualize their feelings. Instead of just letting an emotion completely sweep them away and overwhelm them, their mind immediately wants to analyze it. They try to explain their own sadness, their anger, or even their joy, using logic. They step back and observe their own feelings almost as if they were data points in a science experiment. But as you might imagine, this intense self-awareness carries a pretty heavy weight. Because you understand your own strengths, your weaknesses, and your ultimate potential so crystal clearly, you can very easily become your own harshest critic. This leads to profound struggles with perfectionism and chronic self-evaluation. Your brilliant mind vividly sees what is ideally possible in literally any project or situation. Therefore, falling even slightly short of that perfect vision, it feels deeply uncomfortable and intensely frustrating. So if any of these traits felt deeply personal to you today, I want you to truly, truly internalize this. Stop letting people tell you that you think too much, or that you're too intense, or that you just need to relax. You are not broken. You do not need fixing. You are simply wired to process the world with a level of intense depth, complexity, and intellectual responsibility that, frankly, most people will never experience. And once you understand how to harness it, it is a profound strength. You've got to stop fighting your own neurological wiring. When you finally embrace that cognitive inhibition, your rapid pattern recognition, and your absolute need for complex novelty, you unlock your greatest asset. So I want to leave you with this final provocative thought to carry with you. How will you use your unique cognitive superpower today? Thank you so much